Hello and welcome to Oak Road Hatter, where we're here to discuss all things Preston versus Luton and look ahead to the double header against QPR. I'm Finley Cannon and I'm joined by Adam Driscoll as usual. How are you doing, Adam?
Yeah, good. Thank you, mate. All good. Recovered from Saturday and the disappointment of defeat. But yeah, obviously looking to digest that with you guys and from an opposition perspective as well.
And we've got no Jamie this week, but for the first time this season, we're joined by Lewis Jones. How are you doing, Lewis?
Yes, I'm good, thank you, mate. Big shoes to fill in Jamie's absence.
And this week we're joined by Ollie from Deepdale Digest, so to chat all things Preston. So how are you doing, Ollie?
Yeah, doing good. Happy to have a win for what feels like the first in a long time.
And as I mentioned there, we'll be discussing all things Preston against Luton and the doubleheader against QPR. But before we do that, don't forget to follow us on all your socials at Oak Road Hatter. Like, share, and comment on YouTube and subscribe. And rate us 5 stars on audio. We really appreciate all the support and it helps us to provide the best content for you. But as I said, we'll get straight into things. And I mean, Ollie, we'll go straight to you. As you mentioned there, you're pleased to have picked up your first win in what was quite some time. So, yeah, just talk us through the feeling around Deepdale with obviously a new manager coming in. And was it a new manager bounce or was it just the performance in general?
It's been a bit of a chaotic start to the season I think a lot of people see Preston as quite a sort of boring club, to be honest, where not a lot happens, no big transfers, no sort of knee-jerk decisions. We're sort of very quiet, but yeah, this season has been chaotic. Ryan Lowe left like 3 or 4 days into the season. Then the interim manager left a week later. Like, it's just been complete madness. Yeah, Heckingbottom has come in. I think everyone's pretty much on board with it. I think even those who weren't too keen at the start have kind of been won over already. Thought we played better than we have done on Saturday. So yeah, I'm hoping it isn't just a new manager bounce and that it's the sign of better things to come.
And for us, it was obviously we're yet to win in the league, so that's a draw and 2 defeats back in the championship. So, Adam, I'll go straight to you. What were your thoughts on the result itself, and then also on the performance generally?
Yeah, it's a weird one, isn't it? I think I thought we played really well in the first half. I think we dominated in terms of possession. The amount of times we got in, particularly down the left-hand side with Chong, was really encouraging. We just clearly lacked that final ball in, and that's obviously something that we'll need to work on. But even with lacking that final creativity, we still had 2 or 3 chances to score. I think Adebayo had a good header from a set piece from a corner. Morris as well. So we should be putting one of those away. And I thought if we'd have been 1-0 up at half time, it probably would have, for me, been fine, been quite accurate. As it happens, it was the flipped score, wasn't it? Flipped scoreline at half time. But I wasn't too disheartened at half time based on what I'd seen. I feel like second half, Preston kind of did a job in terms of that closing out the game in a sense. They didn't really need to do anything else, to be fair, did they? It was just, isolate our threats. I thought they did that fairly well because I think we ran out of a bit of creativity. As the longer the game went on, the less likely we were to score in my mind. And it's not always the case. You often think you'll get a late goal, a last minute goal. But particularly after Chong went off, it felt like we were just lacking that creativity. And ultimately we didn't manage to stick one in and get what I think would have been a well deserved point. So yeah, a little bit disappointing, a little bit disheartening. But certainly for me, not the time to be panicking.
And Ollie, did you think there was a threat from Luton? Did you expect us to score before the game and also throughout the game?
Yeah, to both pretty much. I thought, yes, on set pieces, thought you posed quite a bit of a threat. I've always been quite a big fan of Adebayo, so always just expecting to score against us. Yeah, second half, we closed it out quite well, but there's just so many good players in that Luton team that like any of them can produce a moment of quality at any time. Like Alfie Doherty, for instance, I think there was one sort of right-footed shot that angled just past the crossbar, like in the second half, and I thought that was flying in. And then very, very late on, I think there was a moment where Adebayo was breaking through, and it took like a last-ditch challenge to stop him. And that's the thing where even right in the dying embers, we had to put absolutely everything on the line. Heckingbottom said that a draw would have been a bit unjust, but I suppose he's coming from the aspect of he's seen how the players are putting so much effort and stuck to what his instructions and stuff. But I do think probably on the balance of the game, a point would have been probably fair.
And Lewis, you obviously couldn't make it to the game at Deepdale, but you're watching from a stream. What were your thoughts on from the stream, not a stream? What were your thoughts on the performance, Luton's performance during the game, and do you think we should have got something from it?
I think a point would have been fair and the bare minimum, really. I think 9 times out of 10, you play that game, you probably draw, if not win it. I think Preston were very resolute in their defending. I was actually impressed, but we're used to Heckingbottom having very strong setups. Like we played against Sheffield United a lot recently. We're used to what he's played and how he's going to play. I think we created a lot of chances. It's just, it doesn't seem to be going in the back of the net. I think Woodman made an excellent stop from an Adebayo volley. I think it was quite early on in the second half. And apart from that, I didn't think we really properly threatened them, though. So that's what I would look at. I think there's a few little chances, like that block that Ollie just mentioned, but the killer edge isn't there at the moment. That final pass, Baptiste had a chance in the first half where if he laid it off to Chong has got a free hit inside the 18-yard box. I think it's just them final key decisions that we're getting wrong at the moment. And if we get them right, we'll do a lot better. And we probably would have drew that game. But Preston deserved at least a point from the game, to be fair. They didn't create much, but they defended resolutely.
And you mentioned Chong there. I think most of our threat came from Chong throughout the game until he was taken off. He was up against Potts, who was struggling to deal with him and took him out on a couple. He was taken out on a couple of occasions, but there was one moment in particular where he went down for some time, and it was a bit of a worry for us, for the Luton fans watching the game. Ollie, how much of a threat did you think Chong was?
Yeah, like he's just such a good player, and I think sort of an hour or so ago, did I see something about Ipswich now trying to sign him and Ogbene? Like that's the last thing you want to hear in the final days of the transfer window. Yeah, both of them just so good. It's kind of not a great matchup for us either because Potts isn't a natural wing back. We've kind of converted him into one, and he's done a job for us there. But the subject of wing backs at Preston is just, it's been going on for years now, where we've committed to this 3 at the back, and we just can't seem to find wing backs properly. And Kane Kessler-Hayden was brought in to play, so compete with Potts on the right, but because we've now got nobody on the left, he has to play there, and it's just, yeah, it's really not worked out for us. So, yeah, Chong caused quite a bit of trouble for us down that side.
And could you sense the frustration that was building from the Luton fans in the stadium? I don't know whereabouts you sit, but in the away end, it was quite an unhappy away end towards the end of the game.
I didn't actually, but I think it's just because like all the Preston fans were just so sort of just really trying to drag that last little bit out of the game towards the end. And Heckingbottom said how sort of loud it was towards the end. That yeah, the Luton sort of reaction didn't maybe filter through that well. So yeah, how frustrated would you say it was in the away end?
I think it was obviously because it's 3 league games without a win now. I think Luton fans, I'm sure Lewis and Adam can provide their thoughts here, expected more from the opening games, particularly with the likes of the teams we faced. I think we expected a result against Preston just because of the situation you've been in so far this season, and it's just nothing seems to have materialised so far. Is that something you'd agree with, Adam?
Yeah, I mean, on paper, we look at the first few games and, Burnley at home was going to be tough, but certainly Portsmouth away and Preston away, you were looking at those two going, all right, 4 points minimum, whatever order the points came in, kind of irrelevant. But I think it would be fair to say we'd have expected at least a point. We've obviously touched on the reasons why that didn't happen, and a lot of credit has to be given to Preston's defence and the way Heckingbottom's come in and said we have a game plan for this game, and then we'll worry about the rest from there. Because I think that's essentially what he said. So they've clearly got on board with it, and they've defended for their lives, and they've taken time out of the game as we have done on many occasions before. So certainly can't begrudge it. But I do agree. A point would have been probably a fair result all round.
And there was some frustration with the referee from both sets of supporters. It was quite audible that the Preston fans were not happy when he was walking off at full time. What was the main issue that Preston fans had taken with him?
I can't even remember now, but I think generally the level of refereeing in the Championship is just an absolute nightmare. Like, I feel like you might get 1 week where it's not so bad, and then the next few it's just baffling. I've seen a few fans sort of complaining, accusing Chong of diving quite a lot, which I don't know. Not sure about that one.
Yeah, I'm not convinced he did. He got kicked to pieces at least 6 times. So I mean, probably jumping out the way more than anything, wasn't he?
Yeah.
There was a few challenges left on Chong, that Brad Potts one in particular, where I think a lot of Luton fans, particularly on social media, thought that could have been a red. I'm not sure what you guys thought, Lewis.
Yeah, as we said, I had the benefit of having a few replays as well. So personally, I thought it was a red card. He was very high on Chong. He was just under his knee. So I think if that goes to VAR, like we did last year, I think he'd be walking down that tunnel quite early. But as Ollie just mentioned there, the level of refereeing in this league, it is woeful at best, abysmal at worst. So we've come to expect it. Even after last year in the Premier League, you kind of come to expect it. It wasn't much better there. And yeah, Brad Potts did a few. I think Chong at times goes down a bit too easily at times. I don't think he dives as such, but at times he does get a little tap and he makes a bit of a meal out of it. But equally, he does get fouled about 17 times a game. So it's fair enough.
And which players do you think were the most influential for you, Ollie? Obviously, the goal came through a former Man United man in Keane. Was he? Who would you say was most important during the game for you, though?
Liam Lindsay, sort of in the middle of the back three, was very good. Jordan Story had a good game as well at the back. Like, not a huge surprise that I'm picking defenders here, but Freddie Woodman, not bad as well, because he's coming for a little bit of criticism lately. But yeah, that the save from Adebayo at the start of the second half was quite a sharp one. We still don't particularly look all that threatening going forward. So that's something Heckingbottom is going to have to try and figure out quickly. Good finish from Keane, but there are now sort of lingering rumours that West Brom are making a big push to sign him before the deadline.
And what do you think you need to do? Where do you think you need to strengthen in order to solve those issues going forward?
It's a tough one because I do think our strikers have quality. It's just, I suppose, chance creation hasn't been amazing, and sort of streaky bits of form here and there. Like around February, March time, Emil Rees was just banging them in, and now the season's starting, he hasn't quite looked the same. Milutin Osmajic has sort of had a few illnesses and injuries in pre-season, hasn't got going yet. So yeah, I think maybe a striker in and one go out on loan would be good before the deadline. We still need a left wing back, really, and I think a lot of people would like another centre back as well, but I'm not sure I see us getting 3 players in before Friday.
And you mentioned there that probably some of your best performers were your defenders. I'm sure Lewis and Adam can agree that our best performers were probably our defenders as well, aside from Chong's influence in the first half. Particularly Amari Bell on that left side and Mark McGuinness. Who were you most impressed by, Lewis?
I think they're both impressive in different ways. I think McGuinness is impressive in the presence he had. He won his aerial duels, and he just looked strong. Whereas Bell on the ball, he just looked a level above. The amount of times he just dropped his shoulder to go past the Preston players and just bring it out, lay it into midfield. I think that's something we really missed, especially towards the back end of last year. Someone that can just bring it out with ease and lay it off. But I think they're very different, as we know. Mark McGuinness is very much a traditional, big built centre half. Amari Bell's a little bit smaller, not tiny. He's 5'11", I believe, but he's very well versed in the technical abilities. But I think Mengi would need to have a few training sessions with Bell in bringing the ball out and laying it off. As good as he was defensively, his technical ability wasn't great. Plenty of times he's put under pressure, and he just lumped it basically on loose passes at Baptista to clear it up. And I think that led to him getting booked as well in the second half, where he had to slide in, took out a Preston player, which again, I think he might have been a bit lucky to get away with a yellow card in that.
And would you both share the view that we struggled to link the play between defence and midfield and attack throughout the game? It felt like it was quite clunky trying to move the ball forward.
Yeah, I would say so. And there's a big discussion coming, I think, isn't there, for us about formation and how many numbers we have in centre half and centre mid. We don't seem to be working with that two in midfield for whatever reason at the moment. So to me, there was a bit of a disconnect. And we've got good forwards, as Ollie alluded to as well, and a lot of forwards and attacking players that most teams in the league would be envious of, but we just don't seem to be getting them to excel at the moment. So there's lots of room for discussion around that midfield two. Should it be a three, and what combination it should be as well.
And we were really fizzling out of the game until we brought on some subs in the second half. Liam Walsh obviously came on for his debut, and I was impressed by him. I thought he linked the play well, and he moved a lot more than a lot of other players was moving in midfield. Something we were complaining about late last season with Ross Barkley being the only one moving with the ball and having no one around him. But also Ruel Walters came on that right side and seemed to be more of a threat going forward than Ogbene, and was definitely more solid in defence. Is that something you share? Whose thoughts on Lewis as well?
Yeah, I think Ollie mentioned in our pre-match preview that Ogbene he was scared of because of his pace, and I think Kessel Hayden has to take a bit of credit here because he defended him expertly, but he didn't really see the best of Ogbene. So Walters now, he could be, I'm not going to say his first choice. We need to see him there for a bit longer because I saw him in the pre-season game, against Dundee, and I wasn't a very big fan at all. But I think he does offer that technical ability going forward, as well as the bit more security defensively. So I would like to see Walters there. I think he's a very impressive player and can grow into it more. But Ogbene off the bench would be a massive impact and a horror to defend against.
And Liam Walsh, again, I touched on him there. What were your thoughts on his debut, Adam?
Yeah, I thought he looked quite tidy for all the bashing I've given him about not being the player that we want or need. He looked decent. He looks like a midfield that is asking for the ball to do things with it. So I can never really criticise someone that's willing to get on the ball. I don't really think we saw a huge amount of what he can do distribution-wise because he was sort of giving it to some other players quite quickly. But as debuts go, he looked pretty good and certainly looks fine for the level, albeit a very brief spell. So yeah, happy with him. And happy that he's going to sort of settle into the squad as a bit of a different option for us.
Just one more player I'd like to touch on briefly from this game, who came off the bench, and that was Joe Taylor. Obviously, Luton fans last season were calling for him to be back at the club this season after his very impressive loan spells in League Two and in League One. He came off the bench and he provided a very different threat to what Morris had been throughout the game. I thought Morris really struggled to get into the game. That might have been to the credit of the Preston defenders who were tight up against him, as we've seen a lot of defenders do to him. But Taylor was that threat in behind Lewis. Do you think he should be given some more minutes going forward?
I think he can just be brought on a little bit early. I don't think he deserves to start by any means yet. I think Morris, Adebayo, and Chong are all very much proven at this level. I'm not a big fan of the Morris at right wing or half inside forward kind of role. He played off the left for Barnsley, and Chong played off the right for the majority of his youth career and a few early years. So I'm not too sure why one's playing on the right and one's playing on the left when they're more well versed to their actual positions. So Morris, I do kind of feel a bit hard done by for him because it's not his go-to position. It's probably not even his secondary position. So to put him there, I think not nullifies his threat, but it makes it a lot lower than when he was playing for us. Well, last time out in the Championship where he got his 20 goals, he was playing striker. Give him a go there, and I would go from there. But you mentioned and touched on the formation. Is it time for a little bit of a change? Don't have to change away from a 3 or 5. Go 5-3-2 like we did towards the back end of that game. But yeah, I just don't think we're getting enough out of Morris because of his position more than himself personally.
And Ollie, was there any time in the game where you felt like Morris was a threat for your defence?
Not quite as much as Adebayo. Would you not be minded to play him up front with Adebayo, or is that just something that isn't really a thing that Luton have been doing recently?
Right, Edward seems to want to play wide men now. So he's, we've got this kind of like 4-3-3 or 3-4-3 at the moment going on, and a lot of our success before has come through two directly up front, Morris and Adebayo, the combination, the long balls into them, and it works so well. Edwards has openly said this season that he wants us to be a bit more fluid, and I think he's trying to get the ball down. Now, there's a long argument as to whether that plays to our strengths. But I think you're right. At the moment, it's got to be both up front centrally, or one of them's got to come out of the team. For me, it's as simple as that because it's just not working for us at the moment.
Yeah, I've got to agree there with everything you said there. There was no real point in the game where I thought Morris could have caused a problem for Preston. As I mentioned, I thought their defenders were very physical, and that's probably not the sort of game he was looking for. As he's a physical player himself, and he wanted to be able to win those duels, but they were getting the better of him at times, and they were frustrating him. You could see him getting visibly frustrated on the pitch, as we've seen on a number of occasions at the end of last season when he was obviously isolated and we had a lot of injury problems going forward, but also early this season.
One thing I would note is that sort of out of possession, we played sort of a diamond in midfield and had one sitting midfielder. But often you would see our left-sided centre-backs, so Andrew Hughes, would be sort of stepping forward a bit into almost midfield to try and cut off these sort of passes into that sort of zone, which is kind of Morris's area if he's playing on that right side. So it might have been that Heckingbottom has mentioned that we prepared specifically for how Luton want to play. And it might be that, we've picked out that as the sort of thing to nullify and pushed Hughes forward just to try and cut out that sort of direct pass into him.
Yeah, it certainly didn't work, and you kept us quiet in basically all areas of the pitch, particularly once Chong had gone off. But just before we let you go, Ollie, can we just get a bit more of your thoughts on what you're expecting from Preston for the remainder of the season? Obviously, there's a long season to go, but you've had your first win of the season and your first win in quite some time now. So what can we expect from Preston?
It's not even just the win. It's the fact that goal was the first league goal we've scored since the 10th of April, I think. We've gone 7 league games without scoring a goal, and we lost all of them. So even just that one goal it felt like a bit of a monkey off the back. In terms of the season, it's strange because we finished 10th last year, which just looking at sort of just the table, that's a pretty good finish for Preston. It's just that the relationship with Ryan Lowe had just completely broken down between him and the fans for some people, probably more than a year, where it's just not been pleasant. But once we sort of lost the first 2 games in fairly poor fashion, there's this sort of mindset when we were searching for a manager where it was like, we now need to think about staying up. It's like we've got 44 games left yet. Like we're already getting into the mindset of we just need to make sure we're safe. So even now, it still kind of feels like, yeah, like let Heckingbottom get in. Let's hit the points total to stay up, and then whatever happens after that is good, because it feels like a bit of a change of the guard now, really, where we're waiting to see what the future looks like under Heckingbottom.
And if I had to ask you now to predict a league position that you finish in, what would that be?
It's usually about 11th for us, like every year. I think since we got promoted in 2015, we've finished like between 11th and 14th every year. So if we can finish sort of mid-table-ish, yeah, I'd be happy with that.
We're going to go to a break now, but just before we do, where can we find you, Ollie, on social media?
Just at Deepdale Digest on X. That's what it's called now, isn't it? I nearly said Twitter. Yeah, just the occasional moanings about North End on there, if you fancy reading that.
Thank you very much, and thank you for joining us. As I said, we're going to go to a break now, but when we get back, we'll be discussing the double header against QPR. Welcome back to Oak Road Hatter. I'm still joined by Adam and Lewis, where now we're going to discuss a double header against QPR. Obviously, we were just expecting the league game against QPR on Friday, but now we've got a trip to Loftus Road tomorrow. As we record this, it's tomorrow. So we can expect probably significant changes to the Luton lineup. Edwards has said that there will be some changes because we're playing them in such quick succession. Adam, what are you expecting from the away match tomorrow? And are there any players you'd expect to come in?
Yeah, I mean, I think there'll be a lot of changes. I don't know whether the game being this week, last week of the transfer window, helps us or not, or whether it's just a completely separate event. But you'd think, I guess, the focus from the playing side will be on the game, and obviously the board will be on transfers. But yeah, I mean, there'll be very much a changed team. I think Shea will probably stay in goal, given that Kaminsky's back at the weekend on Friday night. And then I think there's opportunity there to get minutes under Burke, Anderson, Nakamba, more minutes into Liam Walsh as well. And then obviously we've got people like Pelly, Woodrow, and Joe Taylor. So I do think there'll be quite a few changes. Maybe maybe 8-9 changes from the Preston game. And yeah, it's a good opportunity to get minutes into some of those players that are returning and see see where they are with their fitness as well.
And it is interesting that we're playing them in such quick succession, because it means that they will likely rotate quite heavily as well. So we'd probably like to see two completely different matches. And what do you expect from QPR, Lewis?
I actually watched their game against Plymouth at the weekend just to I was like, it was on, get a bit of an idea of how they play. They play some quite good football, but I would say set piece is their biggest threat. They've got a lot of big lads. They've got Jimmy Dunn. They've got, I think his name's Michael Frey, their striker. He's a very big lad himself. So I would say set pieces are a big threat. So I'd definitely expect at least McGuinness or Anderson to play, if not both of them. But they're a good side. They showed that last year when they started they beat Leeds. I watched that game last year and they were so impressive. So it's hard to know what to expect exactly, but a difficult game, but heavily rotated for both sides. We might even see a slightly different change in formation. He might want to give it a little test, see if it will work, but we never know. It's a cup game. Edwards sometimes plays strong, so I wouldn't be surprised to see some of the bigger names in there, Morris, Adebayo, possibly even Chong, but be interesting one.
And you mentioned there, obviously, Anderson, who's been out for such a long time after showing real signs of promise when he did come in and being a real rock, particularly for the deliveries into the box and dealing with them. So obviously you've talked about how threatening QPR were from set pieces. Do you think he will be an important player if he comes into the side, Lewis?
I'd expect him to be. I remember the game against Everton away last year, and he come on and he was just a rock, headed everything away, cleared his lines well. But yeah, he's been missed. He's definitely been missed. I think McGuinness, it slightly lessens that burden, but it'll be good to see him back. And he, as we know, he's a very good defender. He might lack that pace, but he has that presence about him. He's a big lad. I think he's 6'3", 6'4", and he's quite stocky as well. So definitely not an easy person to get past.
And it's a compact ground. It always feels quite tight, the pitch as well. Someone like Mads in the middle would be sort of the perfect solution to dealing with deliveries into the box, Adam. Another player who we obviously haven't seen in such a long time is Nakamba. And Edwards last week said he'll be back for this game. And I can't remember the last time he actually played for us. Obviously, he got injured on international duty. But how much are you looking forward to seeing him back in a Luton shirt?
Yeah, hugely. I think we very easily forget how much of an influence he was second half of the championship season when he came in on loan, and I suspect he's still very much at that ability where he was before. So to me, there Nakamba is a top holding midfielder at championship level, and I think you can look at what our success might be at the end of the season, but for me, he's just someone we have to try and keep fit. He's so influential to us getting on the ball, and just that kind of that sweeper as well, really, isn't he? So yeah, I'm really looking forward to seeing him play. Let's keep him fit, and hopefully we can, what we got a lot of games between now and the end of the season. But if we can get 30 league games out of him, I think we'll be looking quite good.
Yeah, and it's obviously been a long, long time since we've seen him play. We get to see him play a full season for Luton. Where do you think he goes into in that side, and who would you put in the midfield around him, Lewis?
It's a difficult one. I kind of touched on it in my Kraus article, where I don't see the two really playing together in the system, the 3-4-3 we play at the moment, because they're both defensive-minded midfielders. I spoke to a Mainz fan as well, and he said the same thing. If he plays as a number 6, Kraus, he will do a job, but he's not the greatest technically. He's not the greatest going forward. And I think the same can be said for Nakamba. He's very good at getting the ball, controlling it well, and laying it off. But he's not going to go on the driving runs like Barkley or even Lakonga. So does it point to change the system? I'm not sure, but I don't imagine the two really working together. So I think putting him alongside a Clark or a Baptiste would definitely lessen that burden on him of driving forward.
I mean, I'd like to see us go back to a midfield 3 like we so successfully did last time we were in the Championship. Have Nakamba in there with probably a Walsh and a Baptiste or a Nelson, just to provide 3 different players in there that can all create something different. Obviously, Nakamba's not going to go forward. We've seen him having efforts from range, and it's not something we want to see often. But someone like Walsh to dictate the play with Nelson sort of running between the lines would be my choice in that midfield. Obviously, we're playing them again on Friday, but there'll be the game tomorrow is obviously an opportunity for a lot of players to stake a claim to be in the league team for that game on Friday. So we'll move on to that game on Friday just after I've got some score predictions for the cup game. So we'll start with you, Adam. What are you expecting from? Obviously, it's difficult to predict because no one really knows who's going to be playing. But what are you expecting from the result tomorrow?
I hadn't given it one thought until you just said, so thank you for that. So I will go for 1-1 in the cup game tomorrow. Yeah.
So is that straight to penalties? I'm not sure now.
It could be. I don't know what the
Believe
rules
it
are. I
is.
think it is, isn't it?
Yes, I do
think
believe it is.
Yeah.
So do you think we win on penalties then?
Oh, we're amazing at penalties, aren't we? So yeah, let's go with yes, because the last time we had a penalty shootout, everyone went mad, didn't they? Yeah. So yeah, Luton to win on pens. Then go on. I'll add that little bit on.
Lewis?
I'm actually going to go for a 2-0. I think we'll keep a clean sheet. I think our rotated side will still be a very competent championship side, to be fair. So I think a 2-0 victory. But you never know with us at the moment. You never know.
I'm also hoping, well, I don't know if it's more optimism or just hope, but I'm also expecting us to win, and I think it'll be 2-1. I'm not sure it's going to be as clear cut as the last time we went to Loftus Road and got that big 3-0 victory with that Alfie Doughty worldie. But yeah, I've gone for a 2-1 Luton win. We're going to talk about Friday's game now. Obviously, we're looking more likely as it'll be two much stronger sides. So the likes of Frey will be in there for QPR. Where do you expect their threat to come from when it comes to the actual first team, Lewis, from what you've watched?
So I watched Karamoko Dembele, and he was obviously he had a good season with Blackpool last year, but he was really bright. He made a lot of chances. He takes the set pieces. His set piece delivery was excellent. Something again we've kind of been lacking recently. I'm trying to think who else. There's obviously Chair's injured at the moment. Dykes was interestingly not in the squad, so he is fit. So we could see him on Tuesday or Friday, but he's a big lad as well. I think we say that about a lot of QPR's team. The back three or back four, depending on how they play, is good. Kenneth Powell's a very good left back, especially going forward. Clark Salter, again, another big lad, but he's good on the ball. So they've got a lot of threat all over the pitch, but the main two, I'd say, are probably Dembele and Frey.
And Adam, what needs to change from obviously the opening game so far for Luton in order for us to cause problems for teams? Because we don't really look like we've caused much of a threat at any point. I think the goal against Burnley was a real one-off moment in what was a pretty disappointing performance. So what needs to change in terms of the way we're playing, or maybe the formation we're playing?
Yeah, I mean, we talk a lot about formation, don't we, at the moment? And I don't. For me, there's not a must that we have to change formation, right? I'd like to see us go to a 4-3-3 to see what it looks like, particularly with midfield options that we've spoken about, and a couple of the wide forward options we've got. But I don't think loads needs to change. If you look at the games in isolation, we've played Burnley at completely the wrong time because they've, basically been absolutely kind of like depleted from their squad. They've lost so many players in the last week. If we played them this Friday, it wouldn't be 4-1 to Burnley, and we've gone the other way with reinforcements. Portsmouth, by all accounts, if we have 11 men and we don't have to take off Morris for Shea, we win the game. And based on what I saw of that, which was quite limited time, I would agree with that. And then obviously, Saturday was disappointing, but we did have chances. We've spoken about the chances that we didn't take, and typically we go and concede one to a team that can't score. So I don't think there's a huge amount wrong. I think it will click, and this is where there's a lot of panic. I think the panic is not helped by the fact we're 8 points already behind a certain team down the road. But let's be honest, the cream always rises. We will finish above them and we'll be fine. So yeah, I mean, look, I don't think loads needs to change. I think we have to keep doing what we do, but we just need to, stick the ball in the net based on the chances that we are getting at the moment.
And QPR fans as well will be. They'll have something to prove against us, and they'll want probably some revenge for that 3-0 win we got last time we visited them, where by the end of the game, I'm not sure there were actually any QPR fans left in the stadium. Do you think it will be a more solid performance than what we've seen so far, Lewis? Do you think anyone who's on the fringes or coming back from injury will come into the side, and who would that be?
It's difficult to know because I think, as we've mentioned, we're expecting a lot of rotation. So it will be disjointed, but I think that'll be the same for both teams. Equally, there are places up for grabs because we have not been great so far this season. So say if a Walsh comes in and really impresses, there is a chance he comes into the game again on Friday. I think that's be a big risk now in his injury record, but the same for everyone, really. I think the back three is fairly settled now. I'm not sure on Mengi at right centre back personally, just because of his technical ability. But Bell, for me, has just made the left centre back role his own very comfortably, and we've seen that. McGuinness, we spent reportedly 5 million or so on, so you'd expect him to start every game. And Mengi he's Mengi, he starts. But I think right wing back, I think if Walters impresses on Tuesday night, I do think there's a chance for Benny to miss out. I really don't think he's been great this season so far. Despite how good he is, I think he's been average at best. So there are players up for grabs. Obviously, Doughty, left wing backs, are given. But the midfield two, Clark and Baptiste, again, there is a bit of wiggle room there. The front three, Taylor, I wouldn't expect to come in and challenge Adebayo or Morris just yet. But there's always that possibility. Chong is similar to Mengi and Doughty. He will start. And Adebayo, he's in that category as well. So there are chances for these players to nick a place in the first 11, but I wouldn't expect too much.
And we'll go straight into it and get some more predictions for that result as well. So, Lewis, I'll start with you this time. What are you predicting for the league game on Friday?
It's a difficult one because we lost 1-0, but we were really solid against Preston. I think they made like 0.26 XG. You're very lucky to get a goal from that. So we're solid defensively now. So let's be hopeful. Let's go for a 3-1.
And I'm gonna go next because I've gone last on every episode so far this season. I actually think we'll keep a clean sheet. We've looked solid, as you mentioned, defensively. It's just going forward. So I think it will be a 1-0. I couldn't tell you who's going to score. Hopefully, Morris or Adebayo to get them started this season. Adam, what are you thinking?
We're at home, aren't we? Which I think is obviously a lot more favourable than Friday night at Loftus Road. So I will go for a 2-1 Luton win. I think defence might still need a little bit of bedding in, maybe at times, and we could be rotating players a little bit in defence. But I'll go for a home win 2-1.
So we're all predicting a Luton win there. Just before we finish, I wanted to touch on some transfer rumours that have emerged they've emerged today when we're at time of recording. Obviously, Ollie from the Preston pod mentioned it, but Chong and Ogbene have both today been linked with moves to Ipswich, who have already recruited heavily this summer. Which of those two would you be more inclined to allow to go, Lewis, if you were going to let either of them go? And what would you hope the club demands financially in that deal?
Ogbene, as good as he is, Chong is debatably our best player in the team. So I think you get an offer for anyone. Chong is the bottom of that list, maybe alongside Mengi and Adebayo. So 100% Ogbene, I think he's an impressive player, but he's replaceable at the end of the day. He's very quick and he's good on the ball. We can put the ball in the box, but he's not exactly two-footed. He can't always cut inside. At times he's a bit one-dimensional of knock it past and run, whereas Chong can do the knock it past and run. He'll dribble around you. He's got the step overs in him. So definitely Ogbene. Fee-wise, Sunderland got 15 million for Clark and 5 million, I think, with add-ons, possibly. So realistically, you've got to look at Bene and go 5 to 10. I think 5 being the lower end, possibly up, and then some big add-ons in there. 10, I think, would just get him outright. Obviously, they're both under contract. Chong, again, he's 15. He's at Clark price, 15 minimum. I personally wouldn't accept anything for him. I'd just say he is not for sale at all. But I think you get a decent fee, 5-10 million for Bene. He can be replaced.
And Adam, what would you be the same there? Would you say straight up Chong is not for sale? And do you think the club will do that?
Oh God, that's $1 million question. Because we predominantly, like most clubs, are a selling club for the right price. I absolutely agree though with Lewis. Ogbene, if it's a case of one or the other, we'd sell Ogbene. Chong, 24 years old, just one of the best players in the championship. He's the sort of player you've got to be building a team around if you want to be serious about being a top championship club and not falling back into the plucky little Luton. Let's try and get into the playoffs. That if we sell Chong, I mean, it's just absolute insanity in my mind. So yeah, Chio would be the one. I don't think Chio. He's really difficult, isn't he? Because he's clearly a good footballer and he's got absolute lightning pace. But when you look at his actual output, if you like, he's not flooding us with goals and assists. We saw what he could do in the Brighton home game after 2 minutes. That pace again. But he just seems to get to the final third, particularly when he's playing right wing back, and just really struggle to know what to do, whether to carry his run or to get a cross in. And we don't see the output there. So for me, yeah, if Ipswich were coming in saying there's £10 million here for Ogbene, I think we'd probably have to let him go. And it does bring up the question again, like, would we go back to a back four in that sense, or would Walters come in at right wing back with the abundance of centre halves we've got now? So yeah, I think I'd have no issue if Ogbene went. Obviously, it's a step up again to the Prem, and Walters coming in at right wing back. But yeah, I mean, I'll be very unhappy if Chong leaves us before the window, and if he does, we need to be investing in some serious replacements. But as I say, top Championship player, why are you selling him at the end of the window potentially?
Yeah, just to add from what Adam said there, where that Brighton game, Ogbene is better in the right wing position. So it's kind of that similar thing to Morris of, are we kind of just fitting them in because of who they are more than we're playing them there because that's their best position? Whereas you look at Morris and say he's a striker or left wing, or Ogbene, you say he's probably a right winger. He can do the job at wing back and was obviously shoehorned in there because of the injuries we had. And obviously Kabore can play against City. So if you move him further forward, will that output increase? You'd expect so because of the positions he'd be in. So he might look at it and go, if I'm going to play right wing for Ipswich, he might prefer that, and just for that fact, he's going to be playing right wing.
And I'm sure. Go on, Adam.
Sorry, no, I was just going to say, I think the idea behind Chio at Ipswich, from what I gather, is that he's going to be there for cover for right wing back because Wes Burns is injured. So yeah, is he going to go up a level and play in the same position at right wing back? It sounds like that might be their intention for him.
I'm sure everyone listening to this has their own thoughts on what the asking price would be for both of them. So we'd love to know. So if you're watching on YouTube, let us know in the comments what you'd want for Chong and what you'd want for Ogbene. And if you had to let one go, who would that be? I'm sure everyone will have the same response, but we'd love to know if you don't and why. That's everything from us. But obviously, if you're going to QPR on Tuesday, let us know, and we'll hope for a Luton back-to-back win against the same side, probably two very different sides as we mentioned. But yeah, from all of us, thank you for listening, and we look forward to hopefully reflecting on some more positive results from Luton.